right then, so let's go ahead and test our speech to text application. Let's record something. Testing 1 2 3. We are going to call this testing. Make sure that you record it. Testing. And then we're going to go ahead and process it using the Google Speech to Text API. There we go. Testing 1 2 3. So that's the data that we received. Let's check the audio again. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. And there we go. Hey everyone, how you doing today? This is Gilbert with Interactive Utopia, and today we're going to be working on a project that basically we're going to be working with the Google Speech to Text API, and I'm going to show you how you can do your own application that takes a voice and makes it into a text for free. Alright, you just saw an example of how it can be done, and basically this is done again thanks to the Google Cloud API speech to text. It says new minutes, you get $300 in free credits, and then you get 60 minutes for free every month, so it's more than enough to test it out and give it a try. You can go to their website to get some information, to get some documentation. What I used to work with this, it's the method of speech recognize, which basically again you submit an audio, they do their thing on their back end, and then they send you a string back or some JSON data with the information of whatever you said or whatever your user said. With this you can create a multitude of different applications, anything from artificial intelligence to maybe just a search engine for your application, or maybe you just want to have voice commands as well for your application. Okay, so let's take a look at the code. A really quick note, if you need a copy of the code, I am going to be uploading all the files to my GitHub, Gilberto Cortez. In this case, the project name is Google APIs with PHP. And it's going to be constantly updated because I'm going to be adding different projects. We started with the authentication, then we did the YouTube analytics, and now we're doing the voice to text implementation. Okay, so if we go to Visual Studio Code, I'm going to show you how I was able to create that simple application. Let's close this out. And alrighty, so let's start with the first section, that is the HTML. In this section, it's pretty simple. We have a couple of buttons that are going to initiate the application, as you can call it, when to start recording, when to stop the recording. That's pretty simple HTML. And then we're gonna have a section which is gonna be the area where we're gonna be putting the recordings onto. So once we record something and we need to be able to display it to the user, that way if we need to process it or download it, whatever we need to do. And so that's gonna be that section. Pretty simple. Again, HTML section is just this area, just an HTML container, a header tag, a couple of buttons, one to record, one to stop, and then a section where we're going to be posting the results of the recording. So how do we record the data? So we're going to go and we're going to use JavaScript to do that. Okay, basically there is already an integrated way into the browser that you can access the media devices from the user. That could be the webcam, that could be the microphone. In this scenario, we just need the microphone. So we go ahead and we request the microphone, just a microphone, no video. And then once we have that that information, or once we get that microphone, then we're going to be start processing the recording. We are gonna be needing to add an event listener, which is basically gonna start the recording. So something for the button. In this scenario, you recall we have the button which is called record, which then we put it on a variable, and then we are adding that event listener to that variable, which in case it's the button pretty much. All right, and let's take a look. So basically this is all the code to process it. But if we go over here, just want to show you the other event listener. So for the stop button, we're also going to add an event listener on click, and basically we are just going to be stopping the media recorder, and then we're going to be logging the result of that. And basically once everything gets loaded, we're just going to start the recording platform, if you can kind of call that. All right. So how are we going to be processing the recording data? We get a stream of data, bytes, that are going to be provided by the browser to your application, where it's basically the voice, or whatever audio it's going to be recorded. So it's just chunks of bits, chunks of data. So we are going to start by creating an empty array, and that's where we're going to be storing temporarily the chunks of data. Okay. After that, we are going to be creating a new media recorder object that we're going to pass the streamed data that we're receiving from the user media device. Hopefully that makes a little sense, but it's going to make sense in a little bit. But once we, this is media recorder that we just created with the stream that we're receiving. Once we start receiving the data or on data available, then we pass that information or that object, that event object, and we're gonna take the data out of that event object. It's just one of its variables, and we're gonna push that data into the chunks array. So we are pulling the information from the microphone, it's turned into a stream of bit data, and then we're storing that data into the array that we had just created, which is an empty array. Okay, so at that point, they're talking, and then they're talking, and then it just kind of just whatever they speak. Like right now I'm making this video, it's just being recorded on that array until we stop the media recorder. Okay, once we do that, remember that event listener that we added, it's gonna call the function, it's gonna log that it's stopping the recorder, and then it's gonna ask for a name that you want to set for that recording. You can put the name yourself if you want to do that. In this case, the user can pretty much name it whatever they want. In this case, I think we called it testing. So that's going to be the name of your file per se. Then we need to process, that file that we're storing. But once we store it, again, we gotta display it to the user, and we are just gonna remember that div that we had empty on the HTML. We're just gonna be using JavaScript to create some DOM tags where we're gonna be adding that content. We're adding the container, the article container, a p tag for some information, the audio element so that way the user can listen to it, and then we have a delete button, and then we have a process button, which is so the user can send it over to Google and get it all processed up. So now from that array we actually need to create the binary data. We were storing a bunch of data, and now we need to put it together. We need to add the type, and then it's going to be ready to be actually processed. Once we take all that array, that information from the array, and create the binary data, then and store it into this variable, then we can clear the array to create space for a new audio. So once the user's done with it, it can just create a new one, because if not, then it's just gonna be whatever data plus whatever data you're adding, instead of whatever data and then starting over and adding new data in there. So that's why that needs to be reset. Then these are just empty tags, empty containers. So we need to add the data and information to them, the inner HTML, their classes, their attributes, and so on. All right. So that way we have the HTML ready to go, if you can call it that way. We haven't appended it yet, we haven't added it to the actual page, but it's ready to go at this point. But before we add it, we're gonna be adding another function, because we're adding this new button to process the data that we are storing. We need to add the function that is gonna start once they click on that button that it's appearing now. So the function is basically going to do a asynchronous call, to our PHP file, which is processing.php. It's going to send the information via post, and it's basically just sending that binary data that we just got ready, up here a couple minutes ago. So it's going to send it over, it's going to wait for a response, and then it's going to store that response on a variable. And then we're gonna log the received information, and we're gonna alert that received information as well. That's why you saw the translation pretty much once it was when we tested it out. So that was the alert. Once we get the alert with what the user said in text, then we can just actually append all that data into the page. I'm sorry. So that's how it's going to be called once the button gets clicked, but we are going to be appending it, that way the user's able to click on it. Sorry about that one. So again, it's going to be appended, and once the user clicks on the button, if they decide to do so, then you'll send the information that we prepared over to that PHP file. It'll wait for the response, it'll log it, and then it's going to alert the user. Okay. Besides appending it, a little bit more that we're going to be adding that it didn't get prepared up here is the actual audio. So it's going to create an object that is the actual audio, and then we from the binary data that we had, and then it's going to attach it to the source of the audio element that we had created, because at this time it's still empty. So that's going to be, once I click play, it's going to use that binary data that we had stored. And then this one is just for deleting it. Basically, if the user wants to delete it, it's just going to remove it from the temporary memory that it's being stored on. And that's about it. That's pretty much how it's gonna, the HTML side of it. Again, it's pretty simple. We just have two buttons, one to record, one to stop. Then it's a section where we add all that information that we recorded. We can display it to the user, and then on the front end, we just get all the information ready and send it over to processing.php. So let's take a look at that. We are using the cURL class again with PHP. You can take a look at the GitHub project, and you can grab a copy of it if you like. That's how we're going to be communicating with the Google server. But before you do that, make sure that on your scopes for your login, you add the scope of cloud platform, this one right here. We already kind of went through this section. If you want, you can take a look at the video for that, but just make sure to add the additional scope, because if not, it's not going to work. You're not going to have permission, and make sure that you're logged in as well. So we start by including, of course, the cURL class. That's how we're going to be contacting it. We create a new object on the cURL server. We're passing our access token, which we're storing on the session variable of the server, and then we are retrieving the raw audio data from the asynchronous call that we made, from the front end page. All right, so this is how you do that. Usually you get the underscore post to get the post data, but in this case, because it's asynchronous, it's a little bit different. So you need to use file get contents PHP / inputs. All right, so make sure to do that. If not, it's not going to work either. You're not going to be receiving the data. We need to get our JSON prepared. So if we go back to the information, it tells you need to do the config, you need to do the audio. If you want to get more information about the config, then you can go and it'll tell you pretty much everything that you need. These are a little bit more information on the fields that that you can include in there. Make sure that some of them are required. So be sure to, if you are more interested, take a look at it and see what you are needing to send over. But in my scenario, we're sending the type of encoding that we're using, WebM Opus. We're using American English from the United States. We're sending the sample rate hertz for the audio, how many channels on that audio. There's, you can send alternative language codes. Maybe you want to add Spanish or Tagalog, speech context, adaptations, enable word time offsets, enable word confidence, and then you can choose the model that you want to use for the speech recognition. All right, so again, if you want a little bit more information on that, you just go over to the documentation and you can definitely read about it. I'm gonna add some of the links to the description of this video. That way it's gonna be a little easier for you. And then basically we are going to be sending that request. We are sending it via post. We are using the URL that was provided to us by by Google. Let's go back, and you can see the URL. It's right here. It's a post request. That's the URL. We're gonna send it over to that URL, and then we're gonna send the parameters, which on the parameters, one thing that I didn't discuss is the audio. There's the audio section, which is this second section right here, and in there basically all we need to do, you can either send them a link to the file if it's stored in a bucket in the cloud, or you can send them the data. It is a base 64 encoded data, so just make sure that you do that properly, and then basically we just take our content, which is the received data from that asynchronous call that we made a little earlier, and we're gonna base 64 encode it, and we're gonna send that over to Google so that then they can give us a response. Basically in this case, we're just sorting the response, and we are making we need to display it in JSON so that way we can get the response on the front end as well. So I'm basically just creating an object saying the audio was received, adding the transcript that we just received from Google, encoding that response, and printing that response. Because on this call, let's take a look. On the call that we made right here, imagine we're waiting the response, and then we are just logging that response and getting the transcript from that response, which is basically what we sent out in this object that we created. And that's pretty much about it. Pretty simple. There's nothing out of this world about it. And so yeah, I would say give it a try. If you have any questions, reach out, leave me a comment, and that way I can try to help you out. But yeah, if you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel. And if you need any assistance with your web development projects or marketing, please do feel free to reach out, and it will be my pleasure to help you out. All right, thank you, and I'll see you on the next one.